What other housekeeping things? I think that's it. We've got folks joining us online. Welcome to all of you online. Happy to have you. And I think in the interest of time, I think we just get started, unless anybody has anything they want to talk to me about before. Okay, great. Well, welcome to those of you who are joining us virtually, and for those of you in the room tonight. We'll have a chance to hopefully have a more intimate conversation with our audience, both virtually and physically present here. This is the second episode or second installment of this year's Conversations in Architecture series. As a series, we're hoping to pull architects, designers, developers, those who are working in Boston on issues related to the built environment, be they buildings or not, to give us a little bit of a behind the scenes on process, to share with us insights about how the built environment is made. And for this particular first two episodes of Conversations in Architecture, we're asking the question, who shapes the city? Thinking about architecture as one of many practices and disciplines that is involved in collaborative city making. For those of you who want to check out the first installment, we hosted Breeze Outlaw from the city of Boston. Breeze is a senior designer with the city of Boston, and they presented Boston's design vision. You can check that out. Dream actually participated in the making of Boston's design vision. But tonight is a really exciting opportunity to hear about another project, at the heart of which is collaboration. So tonight we're really lucky to have Reggie John, who's the executive director of Haley House in Roxbury. I'm going to read a short bio of Reggie. So Reggie's the executive director of Haley House, which is a nonprofit in Roxbury that's dedicated to addressing food insecurity, supporting social enterprises, and providing transitional employment opportunities. With extensive experience in community engagement and nonprofit leadership, Reggie's committed to expanding Haley House's impact through initiatives that foster economic empowerment and social justice simultaneously. Under his leadership, the organization continues to serve as a vital resource for Roxbury residents, as it has for decades, promoting food access, workforce development, and community resilience. So welcome, Reggie. Happy to have you.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad. And joining Reggie in conversation, Greg Minott, starting with his most important accolade, the former past president of the BSA, the thing I'm sure you're most known for. Greg was a 2021 president of the Boston Society for Architecture here. In his day job, he's a managing principal at Dream Collaborative. And Dream is an office that specializes in architecture and design, planning, and development. And you'll learn more about Dream's work, but at multiple scales, mixed use, residential, and adaptive reuse design projects. Greg's a co-founder of the firm and leads the development arm of the company, which we'll hear more about today. Originally from Mandeville, Jamaica, Greg moved to the US in 1999 and earned dual master's degrees in architecture and infrastructure planning at New Jersey Institute of Technology. Recently, Greg was awarded the inaugural Roxbury Legend Award from local nonprofit Reclaim Roxbury. Welcome, Greg. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tonight, I'm going to let these two share direct from their experience. This is one of the things I think is great about Conversations in Architecture, is that we can have these intimate conversations with the folks who are making the projects that we're talking about, which is awesome. So I'll let these two go. We're going to talk about 2147 Washington Street in Roxbury and New Britain Square.
Great.
So, and just tell me, I'll advance the slides whenever you need me to.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben, and it's great to see everyone out tonight. And I'm excited to share a story of collaboration with Haley House, between Dream and Haley House. And at the center of that collaboration is the project that you see on the screen, 2147 Washington Street, and I'll share more about that as we go along. Can go to the next slide. So tonight, I think two key takeaways and a theme that you'll see running through the presentation is a demonstration of how we fostered partnership between architect, developer, and nonprofit organizations and the community. And the second takeaway is how we design for social impact. And what that means is in terms of the potential for architecture and design to create really positive social change. And there's a lot of change happening in Roxbury and Nubian Square at the moment. And you'll begin to see that throughout the slideshow. So we hope to run through this real quick and really make it an interactive conversation. So again, Greg Minott, Managing Producer of the Dream Collaborative. And so we'll have some slides to introduce ourselves further. So I think we could go to the next one. So I'm just gonna give you the cliff notes about the project first, and then share more about our individual organizations, and then I'll expand on the project. So what the project is at the heart of it, the project was seated on the idea of housing and development without displacement. Key piece for this community where there's lots of vacant land, lots of interest in development, and a community that at their core is very dedicated to and had to fight really hard to stay in their community. And at a time when the city of Boston is looking to expand further and further in terms of commercial development, there was a risk of displacement. So the project really tried to stem that displacement from happening. So programmatically, it's 74 units of affordable residential. It's both rental and rental and home ownership. There's an economic development component to the project. Haley House is a significant partner in it, and that's Reggie is the executive director of Haley House, so that's the key partner in this. We have affordable commercial space, and most of the units are dedicated to artists in the community. So a little bit about Dream. So we were founded in 2008. It was a story of a design competition at the time. It was AIA 2008, came to Boston. The late Mayor Menino had the idea of having a key site in Dudley Square. At the time it was called Dudley Square, now it's Nubian Square. And we responded to that design competition with some ideas of how to redevelop the site. And we ended up winning that competition, and that really seeded the idea and tested the idea for the firm. And it was founded in 2008 on contextual community-led design, focused on diversity, not only diversity in terms of the composition of the firm, but also in the types of projects that we do. And also one really unique part about the project, about the firm, which we can go to the next slide, is that we do architecture and development as well as planning. So the project that we're talking about tonight, we not only designed it, but we also acquired the land, financed it, and oversaw the construction, and then we'll operate the building as well. And so you'll see here on the left, the Globe article in 2023, along with our co-development partners, New Atlantic Development, focused on keeping artists in the neighborhood. So this was a construction photo, mid-construction on the left. And of course, there would be no project without Haley House. And so on the right is a mirror article with Reggie, and we'll talk more about how we met and how the project came to be. But I'll first introduce Reggie.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Again, thank you for having me. Really excited to be here to share the story about collaboration Haley House as an organization that advocates for equity, and I'll share a little bit of our mission. Our mission is food with purpose. So a lot of the work that we do really revolves around food insecurity. We run a soup kitchen in the South End. We're going to be talking more in depth about the 2147 project and our social enterprise, the cafe. That is a workforce development program. It's also a community convening, gathering space. Haley House's social enterprise was closed during the pandemic and then went into the partnership and agreement to start the development with Dream and New Atlantic. Again, our main focus is really the power of community, and as I talk more about the organization and really show how it aligns with Dream's vision and what we're looking to do in Nubian Square as a partner in this partnership. So we can go to the next slide. So the organization started in 1960, the founder, John and Kathy McKenna, where folks in the South End and realized at the time in the 60s, the South End was a place that needed a lot of love, a lot of compassion, and a lot of care. So they opened up their doors to neighbors that needed a roof over their head. They needed a warm meal. Shortly after that, John McKenna said, all right, this needs to expand outside of our own home. So we purchased the first building in 23 Dartmouth in the South End, and that's where we kind of laid our stake as a soup kitchen and a legitimate nonprofit. One of the things that I'll highlight too in our fight for food justice and equity, we're also in the affordable housing space. In our portfolio, Haley House has 110 affordable housing units throughout the South End, and a very small piece in Roxbury. So again, as we talk about where we started and where we are now, this is something that's been deeply rooted in our mission since we first started as an organization. As you see some of those pictures, our workforce development work started in that soup kitchen where we were feeding men and women in the South End, and then later realized there was more that we needed to do for that community, and started to teach folks how to bake bread and sell that bread as a source of income for themselves. So we can go to the next slide. Awesome, yeah. So you can go to the next slide. So again, like I said, we started the soup kitchen and baking bread, and then eventually opened Dudley Dough in Nubian Square, and then eventually opened the Bakery Cafe. The Bakery Cafe opened in Dudley in the early 2000s, and from that we ran programs like Take Back the Kitchen, which is a program that teaches nutritional cooking, education around where your food comes from, sourcing local, organically grown produce, and educating people on where their food comes from, mostly young adults and families. And we also started the transitional employment program out of the Bakery Cafe called the TEP program, transitional employment, where we educated and trained formerly incarcerated individuals skill sets that would help them maintain and find employment opportunities in the culinary space right out of our cafe in Nubian Square at the time. Next slide. After 43 years, Kathy McKenna decided she wanted to take a step back and retire. Still around, still a strong supporter of the organization. I still tap in to kind of pick her mind from the beautiful strategies that she laid for foundation for us to be here now. And taking over in 2023 as the executive director, 2022 as the executive director, and really looking at our programs and figuring out how do we continue to impact and strengthen our communities, whether through housing, through food justice, through training and employment. You can go to the next slide. So I talked kind of hopscotched around the different programs that we do. So I mentioned the soup kitchen in the South End, our affordable housing, our urban farming. We partner with the McKinley School in the South End. The McKinley School in the South End doesn't have an outdoor space where the students are able to get outside and run around, but they have a farm. So we're able to do some urban agricultural education, educating them on how to grow their own food, where the foods come from, taking care of a garden, talked about educational training with the transitional employment program that we continue to do to this day. And then this leads up to the 2147 project, our bakery cafe. So the plan for the bakery cafe, we'll be able to get our certificate of occupancy sometime in April, in a few short weeks, which we're really excited about. And it's about 2,000 square feet. The history of that cafe, I shared about the employment piece for formerly incarcerated individuals, but the other important piece was that community convening. There wasn't a time you would walk into the cafe where there was an elected official, a community advocate, a neighbor, someplace warm where folks can come in and make connections, build relationships. And through the transition of Nubian Square, you know, we're really excited to kind of be on the forefront of revitalizing that community in collaboration. You know, since we started as an organization, we realized in order to make the strongest and most deepest impact is to work with partners. So again, we're really excited to be working with Dream and reopening and re-envision what Nubian Square will look like. We're in a fundraising process right now. Those numbers are a little outdated, so you know, cost of lumber and things have gone up, so we're looking to raise about $1 million. We've already secured $325,000 with a lot of strong conversations with partners, key stakeholders, and philanthropists that are really interested in looking to support and continue to support the work that Haley House is doing as an organization. Next slide.
All right, so, this is still you.
That's me, that's still me. So project context, so, you know, Nubian Square, Roxbury is really important, not just for Haley House as an organization, but for the city as a whole. Roxbury is the most central neighborhood throughout the city of Boston. You can go on to the next slide. So, you know, my connection to Nubian Square in Roxbury. So I went to school less than a mile from Nubian Square. I was a student at the John D. O'Brien School of Math and Science. And I remember, you know, taking the bus to go home at Hyde Park, walking to Dudley Square and taking that bus. There was a lot of foot traffic. There was a lot of folks from Madison Park, John D. O'Brien, the Timothy School. So it was really well populated, a thriving community. And you know, it was historically a thriving community, a black community in Boston with a lot of economic mobility. And you know, things have changed over time. So when we talk about revitalizing Roxbury, re-engaging Nubian Square, and ensuring that there's strong organizations within that community and making sure that folks are staying where they are, organizations are thriving. You know, when our organizations thrive, those communities thrive. So that was my relation to Nubian Square. So, you know, being the executive director of an organization that's reopening this cafe, and historically knowing, you know, my background and my relation to that community is really important and exciting to be part of this project. So just some historical context. Like I said, you know, the history of Dudley Square, Nubian Square, it really was the anchor of the economic mobility for black and brown Bostonians at the time. Some of the, you know, the first black bank was right there in Nubian Square, is still there today. So just some pictures of what it looked like. The trolley used to actually run right through Nubian Square, kind of where Dudley Station is right now. Next slide. I think Greg is just going to talk about the ethnic makeup and the transition through the years.
Yeah, like you said, Reggie, it was historically the center of the black neighborhoods, the black population, not only in the city, but kind of in the Commonwealth. And so it did have a lot of the commercial anchors, the typical things you would want to shop for. So there was a lot of people that used to come from all over the Commonwealth to this neighborhood, and that has remained consistent over time, as you can see in the maps. Next slide. However, it does have some challenges. Roxbury, as you can see, it is well below $26,000 for the median income, well below the Boston median. The other thing that's important here on this slide is that 73% of existing affordable housing in Boston is in Roxbury, right? So it had this overwhelming concentration of low-income households, which also means that disposable incomes on typically a lot of the things that need to support retail and a lot of the amenities one would expect in a neighborhood, they tend to struggle here. So that's another thing that we needed to overcome. As Reggie said, it's pretty central to a lot of things. Just about 2 miles to Carson Beach. It's borders with Northeastern University. You get to downtown. It's just 2 miles from downtown. However, as soon as you cross over sort of Massa, Melnia, Cass Boulevard, that's what I experienced when I moved to Boston in 2004. It felt like you weren't in Boston anymore because of the amount of disinvestment in this community that has happened over the decades. While other areas of Boston were booming, Nubian Square was not. And so when I moved to Boston in 2004, I was very curious about that. Spent a lot of time in this neighborhood, getting to know the community, serving on local boards, and that's how I actually met the former executive director before Reggie, met Bing Broderick, thank you, and formed a relationship. And he was a big supporter of a lot of the work that we were doing in the area. Where around that time was when the BPDA also coincidentally started the Plan Nubian Square exercise, which identified several vacant parcels in the neighborhood that were ripe for development, whether they were a parking lot or just a vacant piece of land. And 2147 Washington Street was one of those sites. It came to our attention through a competitive RFP. And at the same time, because of our relationship and because of the work that we were doing in the neighborhood, he actually approached us to say, hey, this is out. I know whoever is going, their cafe bordered the city of Boston RFP parcel, but he was like, hey, whoever develops this, I know I'm gonna have to work with them, but if you guys win it, we'd love to do it with you. And so, again, the power of collaboration, the power of relationship, and we can go to the next slide. So this is an aerial of the site. In the dashed yellow outline, you'll see Haley House's cafe tucked back from the street, surrounded by a sea of parking. And as Reggie mentioned, this was the only, if not one of the very few places in this neighborhood where you could grab a cup of coffee, you could meet with your neighbor, you could have a business meeting. It stood out as I think it was, if not the only. It was the only place. I mean, we get so used to the dearth of cafes and restaurants downtown at every corner. That was not the case in Nubian Square. And so it really became an anchor, not just because of the social mission, but because of just an urban space, that third space that didn't exist in this neighborhood. Let's go to the next slide. And so the site is along the main commercial corridor of 1- and 4-story buildings, most of it office. There's some residential, but mostly, and there's some commercial on the ground floors. This was, again, a thriving economic anchor, but there's a lot of missing teeth, right, in this whole piece with buildings that were formerly there, now they're parking lots, and we're trying to restitch the neighborhood. Next slide. A very active community, very engaged. We went through a robust community process throughout the RFP to eventually get selected. Next slide. And so Haley House, again, a plan of the site, the City of Boston site is in the dark blue, and what Haley House owned was all the way in the light blue, all the way to Washington Street. And next slide. We came up with an idea of doing a building that not only encompassed the city of Boston site, but also Haley House's parcel, essentially wrapping around the existing building, preserving the existing building, and then creating a portal to the existing building, which created a courtyard in between the old and the new. We also, from a development standpoint, because we had to acquire the site from the city of Boston through the RFP process, where we also came up with an innovative idea of, if we are able to develop on Haley House's site, we can provide them with a condo, for a retail condo for their new bakery cafe, which they'll own outright. So it was kind of that, it was a fair exchange, land for a cafe, right? So, and so this is the RFP submission. It resulted in a 6-story building with underground parking. Next slide. The right inside image is the courtyard in between the old and the new, and the very active ground floor commercial space with retail, maker space for the artists that spill out and will activate the courtyard. And a big focus of this was the sort of the environmental justice piece, passive house building, LEED, I believe we're LEED Gold. And so really excited about the sustainability features as well. 62, so a lot, another key piece of this project was it reflected the desires and aspirations of the neighborhood, in that it also had not only rental but affordable home ownership, which was a key wealth building opportunity. There was not a lot of new home ownership opportunities in this neighborhood. And along with that, we focused on a diversity of incomes, right? So we have market rate, but also all the way to low income housing. Typically, the affordable housing tends to be focused on the low income housing. We wanted a broad band to address some of those economic pieces we talked about earlier. And so this is an axonometric of the project. You'll see that portal from Washington Street into the courtyard. Next slide. And we're working with local artists to create installation murals. There's a lot of great murals when you walk through Nubian Square on existing old brick buildings. We want to replicate that on this building. So this is a view from Washington Street. And it's predominantly brick and metal facades, picking up on some cues of the existing neighborhood. And so you'll see the palette that we used. And so I just want to spend a couple minutes on this, because it's truly a mixed-use building. Haley House's Cafe now, instead of being set back from the street, they will have a cafe right up on Washington Street. They'll be activating, it's a two-sided, they'll be able to activate not only Washington Street, but also the plaza. Our residential lobby is tucked in from Washington Street, so again, promoting access deeper into the block by having the main entry to the building off the courtyard. And then we're facilitating having a dance studio. So we have a tenant, a Haitian dance studio, which is incredible. So I look forward to maybe seeing some of you down there when it opens up shortly. So we're fitting out that space currently. And then behind the dance studio, we have 4,000 square feet of maker space right off the residential lobby, which doubles as a gallery space for the residents, 50% of which are artists.
Yeah, so like Greg said, one of the things that was really important for us, and as you saw in the initial designs, Haley House was really pushed in the back of that lot. Even before the building came up, you had to drive into the parking lot, wrap around the building, and then walk up. So being on Washington Street is really important for us. I think the other thing that really makes this exciting is, you know, Haley House was a naming partner. for labeling the Roxbury district the Arts and Culture District. So having a developer come in with that focus in arts, culture, artists being in that space, being an intentional space, it really elevated and really marking what Nubian Square is and has been for that community. So I think that was really intentional. Again, you know, we're really excited to coming back. We've been closed for some time, so there's a lot of folks that are eager and anticipating affordable nutritional meals coming back into the community, a gathering space where folks can get together and congregate. So we're really excited about that. You know, be on the lookout for opening hopefully by the end of this year, hoping construction and timelines and everything aligns. But yeah, so that's what I have to share about this space so far. Yeah.
We have just a few more slides. Again, some inspiration images from Arts and Asylum and other spaces that we were looking to create our maker space. So it's going to be fully equipped with kiln and you know, have all the mechanical and plumbing hookups for all the major equipment that you'd want to find in a maker space. Next slide. And then, of course, inspiration for the courtyard. So, you know, live music. We'll have murals in the courtyard as well to help activate it. Next slide. And also, again, going to the arts teams, really creating opportunities for local artists. This is a mural that will be in the lobby, a custom piece that picks up on the history. Reggie mentioned the elevated orange line that used to run directly through Nubian Square and was a center of the economic activity there. And then through urban renewal, that was moved out of the center of the square to the Southwest Corridor, which was great, and we love the Southwest Corridor today, but it left a really big hole in the middle and access to this neighborhood. So we're picking up on that theme here, and at the end of it, you'll see what is now the bowling building. It used to be the Ferdinand building, which is a major furniture store, a center of economic activity. So again, we're excited about the new, but we honoring the history of the square. Next slide. And so that wraps up the slideshow, and yeah, hoping to have a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to leave this image here. Thank you, both of you. I think one of the things that's really remarkable about this project is that it's really been ongoing for 20 years, if you think about Greg's involvement in Nubian Square for that long, right? So that there's a lesson to be learned, if not something that's easily transposed into our own practices, but just the power of being in a place for a long time, right? And that recognizing that your work as an architect is often dependent on these real genuine relationships that you're building in place and in time. Thinking about this particular collaboration, there are so many different stakeholders who are involved in decision making for this project. And I think whenever there are conversations happening about historically disinvested neighborhoods, the conversation about power should surface, I hope. How decisions about particular neighborhoods have inequitably benefited some neighborhoods, some populations, and then conversely really cause damage or harm. I'm curious how you all see architecture and this kind of collaborative architecture making participating in the kind of remediating of those harms, and what were the levers of power that you had to pull to make this project happen? Who's involved?
I think I can start. You know, shout out to Bing Broderick, who's not here now. I think as a nonprofit leader in nonprofits, our role and our responsibility is advocacy. You know, Bing at the time knew that this RFP process existed and it could have gone to anyone, but his advocacy reached out to a relationship that he had and aligned visions and aligned values and said, hey, we would like for you to take the lead in understanding what our proximity and our skill sets are as a nonprofit. We weren't the developers, but we had a relationship with developers that we trusted in the work and what they've done historically and said, hey, can you lead this process? And we want to partner on you. So I really think, you know, when you think about empowering and advocacy, that's one role that I think nonprofits could play in this space.
And then, Greg, has Dream always been a developer?
From the beginning, the concept was to have development in, actually DREAM is an acronym for Development, Real Estate, Architecture, and Management.
Cool, okay.
But we did start out strictly as architecture, providing services. But along the way, we wanted to, you know, expand our impact. But we wanted to expand it in terms of where we saw opportunity to do so. And this is one of them where it was a unique project. And we had already started working on some of our own projects already. And you talk about sort of, we wanted to expand our influence because obviously working for a client, you're somewhat limited sometimes. And we wanted to expand the way that we could influence, and realizing, you know, where this community was, a traditional response from an architectural practice would not have met the needs of this community, so we had to get even more involved. And it just kind of tapped on something that was already innate in the firm, and we seized the opportunity. And in doing so, learning a lot, right? So we also had to learn how to do this. So a partnership with New Atlantic Development, who already was in this space, was very key to us scaling and, you know, gaining this valuable skill set as a developer as well.
And how did you navigate the city process here? For those of you who haven't responded to an RFP, could you give us a little insight on what that looks like? And then how Haley House's needs and aspirations were reflected in even the response to the RFP?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, again, the Plan Nubian Square process was a direct response to the community needs and the community aspirations of wanting to see planning and community engagement done differently by the city in their neighborhood, and how these parcels and who developed these parcels. So you mentioned at the beginning Reclaim Roxbury, that recently I was honored to have an award from them. They were key in advocating for public land for public good, and making sure that these parcels maximize the benefit for the community. So a lot of their advocacy was key. Also, the existence of like Haley House as a key community organization that was embedded in the RFP to meet the needs of the community. So, you know, I want to say that we were really clever, but we weren't. We really wanted to just respond to the needs of the community that was laid out in the RFP. And we just thought creatively of like, okay, they say they want rental, we're gonna give them rental. They say they want home ownership. I know those two don't always mix because of the funding sources and everything, but we were like, we're gonna do it. And again, Haley House was a key component in terms of the commercial activity that was necessary. And also making sure that long-term, the project stays in the hands of the community. So at some point in the future, you know, the stewardship of this project will turn over to Haley House. That was a key piece of this as well that we wanted to make sure happened.
Yeah, just to add to that, you know, what Greg is talking about, after 15 years, we have the right of first refusal to purchase the affordable housing piece of it. That's work that Haley House has historically done within our footprint. I talked about the 110 affordable housings. You know, we acquired that in 2021 when I came on board as an ED. So really excited. You know, Greg makes it sound so smooth and easy, but he really, you know, the organization really met the needs of the community, making sure that it's energy efficient, making sure that we had truly affordable housing. You know, it's easy to say that you're going to build affordable housing, but how affordable is it when you look at where the community is? So again, just kudos to the partnership and the work that Dream in collaboration with Haley House has done.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys to maybe Reggie, let me first poll the audience. How many of you are architects in the room? Okay. A report card from Reggie. How are architects doing?
Well, the architects that we've worked with are doing great. Again, you know, we're doing a community process now as we build out our cafe. And community needs are really important and can be really challenging working in the constraints that we're working on. And I think, you know, Dream did a phenomenal job actually listening to what those community needs are. One of the things that was important for Haley House is affordable housing without displacement. It's not easy to do that. And again, you know, I would give them an A+ for sure. And also too, to add like the small things like, you know, through construction, that building behind where the new development is happening, we own that building and we have housing right above the old cafe. And our tenants, you know, Dream was flexible, New Atlantic through the construction phase was totally flexible. Our tenants stayed housed and had very little issues and challenges through that construction process. So when you talk about collaboration, it's not just the architects, it's the contractors, it's the developers and all of that. So again, I would give them an A+. We were able to continue to run programming in the old space. We run our TBK program, which will be housed in the old cafe. Often folks are like, are you guys gonna have 2 cafes now? So, you know, our Take Back the Kitchen program has grown so large, and now it has its own home. And it's beautiful because people can come into the cafe, get some food, and then take a look right across that courtyard space. There's young people and families learning how to cook, understanding where their food come from, and things of that nature. So A+ for sure.
Where can they do better?
Do more work. Yeah, again, you know, I know that's easier said than done, but, you know, I don't know, Greg, if you want to talk more about just the challenge of looking at opportunities like this. I definitely, I can assure you that it's not an opportunity that every architect and developer is rolling up their sleeves to take on. It is challenging, but it's impactful and it's deep work that's gonna last and make a significant impact within this community for generations to come. So I think continue to push the envelope, continue to take on some of these challenging tasks, working in collaboration. You know, you don't have to do this work alone. So I think that's where we can lean on more. I think last time I saw Greg, I was like, what's next? What's next?
That's awesome. I think one thing maybe before we open it up for a broader conversation, I think if we could dig into this diagram a little bit more and thinking that the architect's role here is the translation of community needs and aspirations. In this case, it's about program. What were some of the compromises that were made, or some challenges that were made, or things that you learned in hearing from folks participating in this process, what arts and culture looks like or feels like architecturally here? So here we have a makerspace, classroom, dance studio, lobby. What things got edited out of this process, or what things were added in through the process of hearing, listening, translating?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Ben. One of the key things, we had a before and after, but one of the key things is that we used to have the entrance to the building off of Washington Street. And we actually mid-design changed that to have it off the courtyard. And that was in direct response to feedback we were hearing from the community and the neighbors that if there aren't eyes on the courtyard, we're gonna have trouble. And there are some challenges, social challenges. There's some spillover from like Mass and Cass that happens in this neighborhood in terms of open drug use and things like that. That we're, and others are actively, obviously addressing and helping those individuals. But that was a key part, and so we made the bold move of moving that address off the onto the courtyard to really make sure there was eyes on that courtyard 24/7. So that was a key thing that got edited. And at one point, it felt almost like a compromise because we wanted, this glowing lobby off the street, this kind of signature. And it felt like we were missing that. But I think we gained it by gaining, again, more active courtyard, the dance studio, more retail space fronting Washington Street. That will truly be activation and community engagement for folks to walk past and see that activity throughout the day and throughout the week.
So cool. And 2147 Washington is now one of a collection of new projects and also really deeply rooted community organizations. So could you maybe speak, Reggie, a little bit more about the kind of cultivation of these networks of solidarity, of care that surround Nubian Square?
Yeah, for sure. There's a big investment happening in Nubian Square as a community. New businesses, small businesses, nonprofits going into the space. And when we think about a collective and working in collaboration and partnership, like we're already engaging, connecting with Jean Apollon, which is the dance studio that's coming there. Across the street, we have Community Music School of Boston, which is one of the largest music education providers. Like these nonprofit leaders, we're already collectively working together with TAC to ensuring that how are we collaborating? Like, yeah, we're getting new spaces, but we're going to each other's events, we're talking to each other's stakeholders, and really ensuring that once we get here, we're already connected as a community and we're collaborating to ensuring that this isn't just a new thing today, but we really want to make sure that it's embedded for the future.
So cool. And directly tied to the legacy of civic activism, civic coalition building in Roxbury, in Nubian Square, that I think not everyone is familiar with. I think that there's such richness to the activity that is always grounded, really transformative change in the city of Boston coming directly from Roxbury. I had another question along those lines, but I think I'm gonna let that evaporate and ask folks if there's any other questions from the audience, or if anyone virtually joining us. Shout out to all the Bridgewater State crew. Do you want to just give a brief mention of?
Yeah. So the CUBES program at Bridgewater State, they're a group of juniors and seniors in an intense management program. Reached out to Haley House about 2-3 months ago and really wanted to support us and understand strategic vision, the financials of a nonprofit. So I presented to them about a month and a half ago, went to their campus, and I walked in and I heard that 20 or so students are going to be joining us tonight. They continue to really exceed my expectations. So shout out to the Bridgewater students that are joining us virtually. I'll see you all soon for sure.
Love it. Welcome, students, virtually. Any thoughts from the crowd that's here tonight? Yeah, I can hand you the mic too.
I don't think I need it. That's okay.
Oh, just for the people online. Yeah.
This was incredible. I do not bring the perspective of an architect. I went to planning school last century, but I've spent my career working in affordable housing creation. And everything Greg said is so true about mixing these different income groups and tenures. So the one thing that, it's a comprehensive presentation. The one thing the affordable housing practitioners interested in this might like to see is the sources and uses, just because it must have been a bear. And I don't even know if this is a forum in which to get into that, but it must have been really challenging. So a slide just to present that would be awesome too, going forward.
Do you want to share
Thank
your
you.
name? Where you're
Sure. My name's Mike Filoni. I've worked in Boston and in Somerville, Cambridge, and as of a few weeks ago, I'm working in Boston and a Boston resident. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the fun part.
A
That's
for
right.
effort.
It took a lot. I mean, this project. So I'll answer that question in two parts. One is this was from 2018 is when was it 2018, right? What we went after the RP will be completed construction this year. So in a month. So 7 years, long time. But along with that, to your point, there was low-income housing tax credits involved. There's Commonwealth Builder for the home ownership. There is, City of Boston money, NHT money. So there's like 12 different sources to finance this project. Overall, total development costs were around $42 million. And it took us 2 rounds to get the low-income housing tax credit. So automatically, we're at around between design, planning, and getting the financing, we're at around 3.5 years before we ever get a shovel in the ground. So just to give you a sort of a scale, and each one of those sources have their own requirements and timelines, and to put that all together to close on one single construction loan is a monumental feat, as you know. So that was a learning curve for us. But as Reggie said, when is the next one? So that's that's what we're
Easier said than done.
easier said than done. But we're diving back in to do more. So, but yeah, that's a great feedback that we'll have, and I can share that with you as well, for sure.
We have an online question from Michael Brophy, which is, how does the collaboration fit into the long-term vision of the Haley House mission?
Great question. That's a professor at Bridgewater State. That's a great question. So we talked about the 15-year right of first refusal. One of the economic disadvantages that happened in Nubian Square was there was ownership of folks that owned buildings in Nubian Square that weren't connected to the community. So in the long term, when you talk about this investment and what it looks like for the future of the organization, after 15 years, this nonprofit will be able to take over that affordable housing and ensuring that it remains affordable housing for people in the community and truly affordable, and it's not going into the hands of for-profit investors. So when you think about how it aligns with the organization, just ensuring that Roxbury folks continue to stay in Roxbury 20, 30 years down the road. So that's one way that we're being intentional in ensuring that this investment is here for the long run.
That's awesome. Other questions from the virtual audience, or we have one in real-time audience?
My name's Autumn Waldron. I'm just curious, you guys mentioned at the beginning of the presentation the desire to do housing without displacement. And I'm curious if you're measuring or tracking that in any way, or like how you're, sort of talking about that in terms of the project.
Yes, so there's a great question, and there's so much demand for housing. For the 62 units of rental housing, we received over 4,000 applicants, right? So I'm sure you see that a lot in your projects as well. And so we just need more housing. For the home ownership piece of this, we have 12 condos on the 6th floor. We got over 300 applicants. And so, we tried as much as we could. Obviously, there's fair housing laws and everything, and there's a lottery process that the City of Boston goes through. But certainly making folks aware and a robust community engagement effort ensures that folks in this community are aware of the opportunity, they apply. We have folks contacting us through our website about housing, and that's from the neighborhood. And so in terms of tracking, we'll have to see in terms of how this continues to move the needle for this particular community. But through the advocacy, through the work of Haley House, through just a robust community participation and relationships in this neighborhood, it ensures that as many people as possible in this neighborhood have the opportunity to live here.
I think the other thing I'll add too, Haley House has owned properties since the late 60s, early 70s, and we haven't sold any of our properties, and they've remained affordable since acquiring those properties in the South End. Some of those properties we own outright. So kind of just, again, we talk about the future, the longevity of what housing looks like for this organization, what the commitment to this project looks like for this organization.
Do you feel like there are challenges in the future or things that you're identifying or maybe concerned about either in other neighborhoods in the city or for the future of Nubian, things that architects in the room might want to be attuned to? Anything? I mean, where are we and how are you feeling about the city is going to inevitably continue to be faced with the challenges of development and displacement and trying to prevent those things in other neighborhoods. I'm curious if there's anything maybe central to this process that you've learned that you might impart onto other folks who are maybe working in other neighborhoods in the city, either of you.
I think one of the things that would be great is like, how do we model this partnership? How do we model the work of Dream? Building affordable housing, it costs a lot, and the challenges of doing it like this cost even more. So how do we incentivize and support developers that have the ideas, the creative ideas, the community-driven model to build affordable housing as we see it at 2147? I think that's one thing that I would love to kind of focus on and figure out how do we elevate and continue that support, because it's challenging. This is great, but it wasn't a cakewalk for sure.
Yeah, I'll just add to that it's the cost. This project that we permitted and had signed on the construction contract right before COVID. This was around $480 a square foot. That's not possible today. And this is high quality housing. You saw the facades. This is brick. This is metal panel. This is very durable materials, and the units it's high quality throughout. And that's the type of housing that we want to create. But it does cost a lot. Now we see those same prices per unit. We were talking about 800,000, 900,000 in some cases. It costs a lot, and the challenge is that the subsidy, the city and state's doing incredible job supporting all this housing production, but there's not enough subsidy to go around. And so right now we have queues for housing funding, 3-4 years. Like if you were to even get something permitted and ready to go today, you couldn't get it funded for the next 4 years. So that is a key challenge that we'll continue to figure out ways and partnerships through the private sector to get done. But as far as architecture and design, I think it's an opportunity to creatively think about how we build and the whole process, the whole design, construction, procurement process. There's a lot of inefficiencies. I can see it from the ownership side and how those costs just kind of add up and really push the cost of housing to where it's no longer affordable to build it. So I think just that collaboration, not only with the community, but also within the trades, within architecture, engineering, the construction, is really key. I don't think there's a silver bullet. It's not like modular is going to do it. I think it's really further collaboration and partnership to see the inefficiencies and creatively come up with solutions.
Wandy, I don't mean to call you out, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts about this. Wandy Pasquale leads all of our housing work at the BSA, and I know a lot of these conversations have been central to the things that you're working on. If there's anything that you might offer or share here.
Thank you both for an incredible presentation. I feel like as somebody who was sort of present in the very beginning of it. It's really cool to see how far it's come over the last couple of years. I think one of my questions, and because this has been really top of mind recently, is you mentioned that this is a passive house project. You mentioned that it's also LEED Gold, and I'm super curious as to, as you were thinking about the sources for this project, how and if there were incentives at a local or state level that helped achieve those sort of standards from an energy standpoint, and if any of that really helped with just making it pencil out.
Oh, absolutely. Everything helps. Every bit helps. So there is, and I hope those things continue. I know there's a lot of, stirring of the pot right now in the administration, but I hope it continues because we do need those things. For us, passive house rebates, I think it totals somewhere around $250,000 in total, right? I mean, when you think about it, it is a $42 million project, but every single, that's the subsidy for a unit, right, from another source. So that's a key, that's a unit. Another unit we could build because we have that subsidy source. And so passive house was a great tool to help us with the whole capital stack for sure. Yeah.
Sai, do we have any other questions coming from?
We
the
do.
ether?
We have Chris Cronin on the line saying, are there any more plans for development after this project? I'm assuming Dream Collaborative, what's in the pipeline for you all?
Yes, we have several more projects in the pipeline in Roxbury. We have some that, that came right after this project. We have P3. That's another 460 units of housing. We have Boston Water and Sewer Commission. That was, again, all of this goes back to that original plan of using public land for public good, and the city really focused on underutilized parcels and making them available for housing.
Do you want me to go back to that slide?
Yes.
Here, right?
Yes.
Cool.
So on the left, that huge parcel in that cyan color is P3 right across from Northeastern University. And then, so we're doing that. We're a sub-developer on that with HYM and My City at Peace. And then across Melnia Cass Boulevard, that's also in the pipeline for 402 units on the Boston Water and Sewer Commission parcels. Again, city project and a partnership there as well. And then we're also realizing as we go through all of our pipeline that the housing supply isn't gonna be met only in Boston, so we're looking at gateway cities. North of the city, Lawrence is one that we're currently looking at, and some suburban locations as well for that kind of affordable and workforce housing.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris, from online. Are there any developers in the room? Aside from Greg? We can never seem to get developers to come visit us here, but I feel like they're central to these conversations, or should be. Or maybe not central. They should be here in the conversation. I know we talked a little bit about Nubian and the history of Nubian, but maybe for folks who don't know, why are these parcels available at all? Why are there so many vacancies here that are ready to be developed now?
I think a lot of them were city-owned. Some were foreclosed, tax liens, things of that nature. And I think the city doesn't want to be a property manager and have come and understanding that there's a housing need, and these empty spaces could be used for gainful and purposeful uses. So I think, I commend the city for going in that direction and working in collaboration with developers to use city-owned land for good.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a large part of what Breeze brought with them when they presented in the first Conversations in Architecture series. The plethora of mayoral agendas that are being enacted via the planning department now, the Article 80 reform, the public land for public good citywide audit that identified all of the citywide vacant parcels that are owned. I think 25% of them are in Roxbury and Dorchester. A planning academy, which is ongoing. But thinking about, again, a partner or player in this ecosystem of making this project happen is the city of Boston itself, right? So how close are you to decision makers at City Hall and the planning department at this point in your career? Like is the relationship as intimate and as friendly as it is with Reggie and Haley House?
Yes, I mean there are partners. I mean in this whole thing. I mean we're pretty close with the Mayor's Office of Housing. Sheila Dillon has to approve a lot. She does an incredible job with her team of overseeing the design and financing all of these incredible projects. The planning team, the planning department, from the director of real estate all the way to the planning folks. These are folks that we have direct access to, and it's incredible because you end up shaping a lot of what's coming, which is helpful. We talked about the design vision, so it was incredible to be part of that, and then to see it actually in built work. So it's kind of I feel like I'm like ingrained in the ecosystem, which is it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and you see a lot of how decisions get made, and it's really expanded my perspective as an architect. And I think it challenges me to think about how we define ourselves as architects, and that's what I hoped. You mentioned my presidency. That's what I had hoped. Hopefully, some of that got accomplished during that time, but I just continue to grow the firm in that direction and try and encourage others to jump in.
Can you just speak a little bit more about that? I think that's really super important. The role of the architect here is not just someone who draws a bunch of drawings and hands them over to Haley House or hands them over to the developer, but you've found yourself now enmeshed in these networks of mission-aligned care. And I'm curious, how does that translate for folks in the audience who may be students or maybe emerging professionals? Like, how is this version of architecture emerging via your practice, and what do you think it might look like in the future, the role of an architect here?
Yeah, I actually come across a lot of architects in City Hall in the work that we do. Former planners or I should say former planners, but in terms of planning from a traditional practice standpoint, and they've parlayed their skills into other areas of the process, and it's incredible to see it from finance. I've seen folks that were in planning or urban planning are some of our lenders. I mean, it's incredible to see how, as people grow in their careers, what's available to them, and they've taken advantage of it. And it's I think as designers, as architects, we're so creative and collaborative in the way that we're trained, and that's the kind of collaboration that's necessary to solve some of these big challenges. So I think we have a unique skill set that is key to solving the housing problem.
When we first got on a call last week, 2 weeks ago, I asked you each to consider a question you might want to ask each other that you haven't had a time to discuss yet. I don't know if that is something that came up. Reggie, if you have a question for Greg that you haven't yet asked.
This is a hard one. It just came to mind. If you were to do this differently, what would you do?
Wow. Yeah, it is a tough one. I would have, I hoped it would have gone quicker. That's the only thing we would have done differently. I think the collaborations all around were incredible. The city, the state, with your organization, the community. I do wish there was more available for art. That continues to be a finite resource, but we were able to get some incredible grants, and but there's a lot more to be done. But I think we just would have done it quicker if we could, if the resources were available.
Be nice to me now and asking me my question.
Yeah, Greg, if you have one for Reggie.
Yeah, I mean, given the work that you do, and Haley House continues to be such an anchor institution in the neighborhood, and under your leadership, and looking into the future, what keeps you up at night?
As an organization, I think I talked about this a little bit, is we have a huge responsibility and a huge role. We are so many things for so many people in the community, and that is a lot to hold as an organization. So I think when we find opportunities to collaborate, opportunities to create, being intentional and really hearing and working with community and making sure that we deliver on that promise, as you said, the landscape is changing. Nonprofit organizations are going to potentially lose some potential resources that they have. So we're challenged on how do we continue to support our communities, lead our organizations in a more strategic and more intentional way with potential loss of resources, because our work doesn't stop. So yeah, I think that's one thing that keeps me up at night. And I think collaborations are important. 15 years from now, when we buy out those affordable housings, we have to look back and say we wouldn't be able to get here if it wasn't for Dream Collaborative. Like, we would not be able to deliver what you guys are delivering now. But because of this collaboration and the partnership, you've set this organization in motion for 15 years to expand our affordable housing footprint in Roxbury.
So cool. How can folks support Haley House?
We still have another about $600,000-$700,000 to raise. So if you know anyone with
everyone has their checkbook handy.
I think get involved. One of the unique things about Haley House, we have a phenomenal volunteer opportunity in our soup kitchen, on our farms, to really just roll up your sleeve and just be a part of the work that we do. I think that's one of the most interesting things about Haley House, is there's a real low threshold to getting involved. I tell folks, volunteer in our soup kitchen first before you write a check, to really see the impact of the work that we're doing. Haley House, this soup kitchen, has been in the South End for the 60s. If folks knew and remember what the South End was in the 60s, and to know what the South End is now, to still have a bustling soup kitchen where there's still people facing food insecurity, I think it's really important to just get involved. And if not just with Haley House, just get involved with a nonprofit that's doing some amazing work. Nonprofits need volunteers and supporters now more than ever. So that's my pitch.
Awesome. Hopefully folks online will hear that. Yes. And also the BSA is happy to support. I mean, we are also a nonprofit. I think part of the Conversations in Architecture series subtext is how do we keep building more relationships that can build these coalitions of mission-aligned organizations that recognize architecture as a tool and a vehicle for enabling that mission. So we're here to support.
Appreciate that.
And then Greg and Dream, there is a slide here.
Yes.
How can we support Dream Collaborative?
Well, there's a slide at the end, and it feels like a full circle moment, because we started with the AIA convention coming to Boston, and that's what when we really launched Dream. And now the AIA convention is back. And we're excited to now have a project that will be fully completed by the time the convention rolls around. And we have an architect-led tour. So we'll have our co-developer, New Atlantic Development, present, some members of our team, and you'll get to tour the building. Cool. And so sign up, and we look forward to seeing you there. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Yeah, June 4th is when your tour's happening.
Yes.
Great.
June 4th.
Excellent. Are there any other thoughts from the crowd? Yes. Oh, Sai's got you.
So I guess my question would be, Boston's not unique in needing more affordable housing. So I just wanted to know if you guys look to other cities, if there's any like examples of things they're doing in other cities that you wish you could do in Boston, and what's unique about Boston that allows you to do the things that you're doing that maybe other cities can catch on to.
Yeah, great question. I actually think we have it pretty good in Massachusetts relative to, we could always do better, but relative to other places, the ecosystem is very rich in terms of the sources that we have available, the organizations, the creativity of our lenders who create tools that don't exist to make projects happen. And so I believe there's always something to learn from other folks in other places, but we stand out as leaders in that space, and we're very proud to be part of what's happening here, and maybe we can export it to other places. I think there is definitely things that we could learn from other places in terms of planning, zoning, things that kind of make the process a little easier. And that's beyond affordable housing. That's just zoning and planning in general. Transportation, there's just different things that just help to, because neighborhoods is not just about housing, it's about the economic development, the transportation, how you get a robust economy, and supported by a very strong physical infrastructure. And I think we could stand to learn some things from other places in that regard. And I think we're on our way.
Awesome. Any other? Yeah, Wandy.
On the topic of collaboration, and I was just looking at the image that you had shared about that first floor, sort of like activation. Maybe this is a question for Reggie and to both of you. But as you're thinking about this building then becoming activated, people being in here, right? What are some of the like collaborations? I'm looking at the makerspace, I'm looking at the dance studio, I'm looking at Haley House. How do you imagine all of those folks really like coming together? And have there already been, like, is the Haitian dance studio already talking to the makerspace about potential collaborations? Are they already imagining what they're gonna be able to do? And what's something you're really excited about with these collaborations?
I'll start. So like I said, myself, the executive director of Jean Apollon, we started having conversations already on how we're going to collaborate. They do performances, we provide food. There's a beautiful courtyard. Historically, Haley House used to do poetry slams, spoken word events. We're looking to doing that outside in this beautiful courtyard that's going to be built. And also in collaboration, once again, in our design of the interior of the cafe, we're trying to make the space as flexible as possible, so inviting other organizations into our space, and they don't necessarily have to be Roxbury-based organizations. We just want to bring people and community together within that space and collaborate with the partners that already exist.
Yeah, and I'll just add, for the makerspace, we've never run a makerspace before, so anyone who has, please contact us so we can figure this out. But yeah, we're excited to use a makerspace, the art space, to really help to activate the courtyard, through, put on events, maybe dance events, maybe, Haley House already has. will have access, be able to open up their doors and activate that courtyard. And also there's a condo board. So Haley House has a seat, just from a formal standpoint. Haley House has a seat on the condo board. The rental the apartments have a seat, and the condo association, the home ownership is the third owners on that. And so from that sort of structure, we're gonna be able to continue to collaborate in a more formal way as well. And so it's built into the way, not only how it's laid out physically, but just how it's gonna run organizationally.
Super exciting. Thank you both for joining us tonight. I hope everyone took away from this the same things we wanted you to take away, but this project is really remarkable in that there are so many players, so many aspirations, so many negotiations of what it means to design and build for a city that really feels like it is for everyone and it is for the folks it is intended to serve. So thanks for sharing all that with us. I think it's a wonderful cap to our first quarterly theme about collaborative city making and thinking about social resilience as being a precursor to ecological resilience. And so our next series of conversations is going to focus on climate futures and the role that designers, architects play in not just mitigating climate harms, but thinking about really actively regenerating ecologies for people and not people. So welcome you two to come back and join us for those conversations too. Before we wrap up tonight, I'm curious, I think maybe Wandi or Sai, if there's any other upcoming programs we want to put into the ether for folks to join us for. If not, we'll send it out via email. But yeah, let's give a hand to Reggie and Greg. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to Sai. Any other comments from the internet? Okay, and then folks, feel free to reach out to us. We can be a conduit to more questions for Greg and Reggie. But really appreciate you all being here tonight. Feel free to get snacks and drinks as you make your way out. But thank you. Thank you, Reggie and Greg.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.